All right, we've got to talk about a few things. First of all, the elephant in the room, which hasn't gone unnoticed by a few of you. We've been missing for 6 months, so let's talk about it. So where have we been? Well, first off, we got the opportunity to help out a friend and local dev to complete a milestone build for the Game Developers Conference. They needed some extra hands on an exciting game project, which we were excited to help with, but it's still under NDA, so we couldn't film or show any details of that project. Secondly, another studio hired us to help port a popular PC game to Switch. However, between these two opportunities, it meant over half our studio was working on projects we couldn't film or record. And finally, we got a little burnt out of making videos. However, we've loved showing the development process with everyone and getting feedback along the way. So going forward, we'll be posting a little less frequently, but with the hope of ensuring we can find a schedule that allows us to not disappear again. So where does that leave us? Well, when we last left off, we were working on completing art passes for World 2, which we showed a bit of previously, but as a reminder, here's a quick highlight reel of what our gray box levels look like versus how they look after our artists complete their beautiful art passes. But we've done a lot since World 2, so I'll hand it over to Shay and Zach to showcase how we approach both the art theming and design goals of our third world, Icy Icy Mountain.
So designing a new world is probably one of the more exciting parts of developing Par for the Dungeon, because we have a whole new range of opportunities, so many ways to introduce new mechanics and new puzzles, and so many exciting just ways that we can approach that. In each world, we have 2 ability mechanics, and one of the things that retrospectively, looking back at World 2, I sort of saw design-wise was there was a lot of potential in individual elements. So the trains had a lot of opportunity space for different ways to interact with them, and the spike traps and the armor ability played well together, but didn't coordinate with the grapple hook quite as well. I was left sort of feeling like the design wasn't like fully capitalized on. So that's where I started from, and I wanted to have these mechanics feel really cohesive and feel like they're all like playing together really nicely. So I started brainstorming in Visio, just mocking up some diagrams. You can see here I had like some bungee ideas, some fire bombs, some shock arrows, a bunch of different things of where we could take World 3 mechanics, even some sticky goo. In the center here I have the environmental mechanics, so there's some snowmen who might throw some snowballs at you, some elevators, some jetpacks, a whole range of things, and it's really exciting to get to brainstorm this sort of stuff. What we ended up on, as you can see from the diagram, works really well because all of the elements in the middle, the enemies and the environmental mechanics, have interplay with both of the player abilities. So the firebomb can melt the frozen enemies, but the sword jump can also break the ice and kill the enemy at the same time. That way we can set up a lot of different puzzles, but they feel like they're part of like the same cohesive world. So all in all, we were super happy with how these mechanics turned out, and we were getting a lot of great ideas for levels, and that's when we handed it off to art.
Yeah, so with Zach figuring out all the design elements that we needed for the levels, as well as the overall theming, we get started on some very rough concepts. So with that fire attack and jump attack, we have elevators now too. It just kind of seemed natural to theme ice-based biome around a greater mountain, and the idea of constantly ascending, some verticality, and that kind of gave into these ideas here that you can kind of see the starting of, where you have some taller structures potentially, as well as more alpine trees and snow, which can be a bit tricky when it comes to the top-down perspective our game has, but I was pretty confident to make it work, and future sketches kind of reflected the increased sense of things getting higher and higher. But what's really important for our 3D team is they actually get a proper representation of what those might look like when they're actually modeled inside of Maya. So what my job here is to make sure that all the assets I've kind of thought about all work together lineless in a pretty much representative gameplay screenshot that I just paint over myself. As much work as it is, it's a lot less effort overall, instead of having them just make their best guess at what the color should be, how big things should be in comparison to each other, and having to fix that later on down the line. And admittedly, a lot of the stuff that actually ends up in the game isn't even in these shots here. Our 3D team's actually gotten to the point where they can really freestyle and make their own assets the way they want to. So while this essentially serves as a solid baseline, a lot of other really cool assets and ideas come in later down the line as well. Here we had some rabbits, penguins, the polar bear in one of the concepts as well. Additionally, you see the beginnings of maybe some kind of ice-based mechanic that actually developed into something pretty cool later on down the line. Really excited for you guys to check out the work Camilla and Jess did. I think this is probably one of our coolest looking level kits yet.
This world that we're tackling, this world 3 with the ice and traveling up the mountain, it presented a number of difficulties in terms of the technical implementation. And so one of those is the fog. So Shay and Zach and Cody, they had this vision for this world of traveling up a mountain. And a big part of that is trying to communicate that sense of height. And fog plays a big role in that. So we can see here in one of the levels that we have this effect that it looks like the level's so high that you have elements of it disappearing into the fog. And we're pretty happy with how this turned out because it looks like a pretty complicated effect, like you have this fog volume that everything's coming out of. But in reality, it's actually pretty simple. We just have, based on the height of any given pixel of the object, it will just fade out to a certain color that we're able to set. And then as you go down, you can change the color. And so the other thing that I set up here was the artists are able to go into each level and tweak the color and the height of the fog as they wish. So if they want it to fade out more gradually, they can. If some of our levels take place in caves, so if they want it to be like a really dark fog, they can. And then changing the colors like this so it doesn't fade in the background gives you a sense of how that technology is working and how simple that kind of trick really is. So the other challenge that we faced with communicating these new mechanics and this new feel for this World 3 was the ice technology. So we wanted enemies to be able to be frozen in these little ice blocks. What really needed to be communicated here is that, for one, they needed to look like ice, but you also needed to be able to see through the ice block well enough for you to see what enemies inside, or sometimes we put coins inside or different gameplay elements. So you need to be able to see through it, and it still needs to communicate the fact that it's ice. So we just did a few little visual tricks of fading the ice as you go down the object here. And then the artists are actually able to control what part of the ice block is more see-through than others through what we call vertex colors. So you can see here that everywhere that the artists have colored in white in whatever other modeling program they're using, it will be kind of more icy. You won't be able to see through it as much. And then everywhere that's the dark kind of black is much more see-through, so we can see those objects through the ice. And then once you then put on the ice material, it's able to read those values and give you that final kind of icy result.
First of all, as a studio, we want to say thank you to everyone who has asked if we're okay and sending kind messages hoping we would still be doing YouTube. We can't say it enough, but it really has been a rewarding process to show our games in development with everyone and interact with this growing community. So thank you for staying subscribed while we overcame these few hurdles. Now, what we've shown today is a snippet of the work that has been completed over the past 6 months. So stay tuned for future devlogs where we will be covering all kinds of topics from World 4 development, character customizations, and most importantly, some potential launch plans. Thanks as always for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one, which won't be another 6 months away. We promise.